Welcome to the Apartment Operators Podcast, where you can learn from experienced operators what it really means to be an apartment operator. No fluff, no sugarcoating, just the raw, unfiltered truth of the ups and downs of operating multifamily communities.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Operators Podcast. And today we have Juan Vargas. Did I say your name right?
That's correct. Yeah, Juan Vargas. Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Well, welcome. Great to have you on the show. We always start our conversations with just giving the guest a few minutes to introduce themselves. And so tell us a little bit about you. What have you done so far? How your portfolio looks like? Give us a little bit of a picture.
Yeah, no, I definitely will. So I got my start in multifamily in 2016, right? So my start in multifamily was 2016. Before that, I was doing a single family. And so I got into some single family homes. But then I quickly realized that multifamily was the better option, right? Multifamily was a better option. I'll tell you why. It was because just basic math. If you're vacant on a single family house, then guess what happens? You're 100% vacant. And if you have a 10 unit, you're vacant one unit down, you're still 90% occupied. Yep. And so that was my reasoning. And I was like, man, it just makes way too much sense to go into multifamily. So I got into multifamily in 2016. That was through a 32 unit. And since then, I've been a GP and over 1,000 units. We have a deal right now under contract in Houston. It's a 264 unit deal. So that's another 200 units. But I've been a limited partner as well. So I've been a limited partner in over 1,000 units because I like to see what other operators are doing, other strong operators are doing. And I like to also, just keep the capital moving and keep the capital growing, and that's how you're able to, I like the thought of that mailbox money, right? So if you have that mailbox money coming in and you don't have to do much for it, it's awesome. So I do a little bit of each. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I keep helping people understand that there's nothing passive about what we do, right? It's like, why do you want to get into multifamily? I want passive income. Well, what we do is not passive, right? If you want passive, you need to be on the LP side of things, right? If you want to do what we do, if you want to be a syndicator, if you want to buy those and operate them themselves, there's nothing passive about that.
Yeah, and you're 100% right about that because even on the passive side, whereas it's almost 100% passive. I mean, you still got to do look at the financials, right? You got to at least look at the financials, make sure that you understand what's going on, and ask questions, right? So I'm on both sides, so I kind of see both sides. But understand the financials, understand what's going on, understand the decisions that are being made, why they're doing a certain thing, why they're moving a certain way versus this other way. Why those things happen. Because it doesn't mean that you're going to be an operator yourself or be active, but you want to be able to understand where your money is at and what your money is doing, right? But speaking specifically on the active side, there's definitely nothing passive about that because there's a lot of everyday operations that you should be involved with, and so yeah, it's definitely a day-to-day type of activity. And I'm gonna say this real quick. There's something that a lot of people out there they want to be an active person, right? They want to buy their own deals. Why? Because there's more money to be made, right? And we know that, right? There's a little bit more money to be made, but there's a reason for that. It's because there's a lot more time and effort and just a lot more involvement that it takes to be able to make sure that you operate one of these deals correctly.
That's the kind of things of be careful what you wish for, right?
Be careful what you wish for. Exactly. Is not going to be passive. Sure, you can make more money, but if your goal is to be passive and to spend your time with your family at the beach and just travel the world, and then it might not be the best thing, right? Or you can be an active, a passive active. Whereas there's ways that's a whole nother conversation there. But you can be a passive active where you're not one of the main lead asset managers, so to speak.
Yeah, there's a lot of SEC questions going on around the passive active thing. So I would highly urge everybody that considers something like this to talk to a securities lawyer.
Exactly. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your organization, right? You're a GP in 1,000 units. Are you the lead sponsor in all of them? Are you the one that works with the property management? How does that look like in your world these days?
Yes, yes. So I am not the lead sponsor in all those, deals. Some of those deals I participated in other activities. I've been, a guarantor. Have helped with, with some capital. I mean, just been involved in other different ways, right? But 550, about half of those units, I am involved, on an active. Um, role in an active role as an asset manager. And so, the deal that we have now, this will be the third, where I'll be fully involved. And so, it'll be, 700 units, in that range. So yeah, that's overall, viewpoint.
Okay, great. So do you guys use third party or do you guys do self-management?
So we use third party. We have thought about, in the future, maybe doing in the future, maybe getting a little bit more, vertically integrated. But for the time being, we are going to do just third party property management because those guys are the ones that understand the day-to-day operations more than we do. And so we have to, be fully aware of, our expertise and our skill set. And so property management is not one of those. And so, we leave it to the pros, for them to handle those day-to-day operations.
Yeah, but you gotta admit, you'll learn that pretty fast.
Yeah, you sure will.
You find yourself learning the things that you didn't want to learn pretty fast.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of things that are involved that people don't realize. It's not until you actually do get to be involved in a property where you start to see that, hey, man, this is not really what I signed up for, like you said earlier. But it's a lot more things to it than people realize. Yes.
And one thing for sure, this industry will teach you something new every single day.
It will for the better or for the worse. It's going to teach you something, right?
Yeah.
One thing that's 100% certain, and I want to say this to everybody: passive or active, no matter what it is that you focus on. One thing is for certain, 100%. Is that those projections, those performance that you see day one, whether you're looking to invest in a deal or if you're an active guy looking to, raise capital and take down your own deal, is that those projections are not going to be right on. They're either going to be below, or they're going to be better, whichever, but they're not going to be exact. And so,
and sometimes both, right?
Yeah. Sometimes both. Yeah. So it's not going to be, sometimes it's better. Yeah. Up and down, monthly, or yearly, but you're never going to be spot on. And so you have to, do your best to underwrite to the best of your ability and look at the historicals. That's what we do. We look at the historicals and make sure that, hey, what we have here, is it reasonable? Is it sustainable? And so that's how we are able to underwrite our deals,
Awesome. So how do you go about, are you guys in one market? Are you guys in multiple markets?
Yes. Yeah. So we are in Houston now, Houston, Dallas, Phoenix, and some of my other GP deals that I'm not actively involved in are also in Dallas. And so one a little outside of Houston that I'm involved with. And then I'm a guarantor in another deal which is a tertiary market in Lufkin, Texas. So yeah, the majority of the deals that we look at are deals that are in primary markets. And there's reasons for that, versus the secondary, tertiary markets. We just, personally like the primary markets more,
Okay. So since you're using third party and you're in so many markets in multiple states, I'm going to assume you don't have just one property management. Is that true?
That is correct. And so, yes, that's another challenge that you have to look at, and does your third party property management company that you're using, are they active in those other markets that you're also interested in, right? Mm-hmm. And if they are, great, right? And even if they are, then look at what other assets they manage in that same market that you're looking at, right? If they have one or two deals and they don't have a good foothold on that market, then maybe they're not the right people to go with. Maybe it's it's better to look for somebody else that's local, that's more local, and they're headquartered there, and they have several deals and properties that they manage and oversee. So yeah, for us, we started off in Dallas. Our next deal after that was in Phoenix. And so, our property management company from Dallas, they don't manage in Phoenix. They specifically manage right there in the Arizona market. And so, they have a strong understanding of that market, of those assets. what goes on there. So, it was an easy decision for us, and the other thing about that was, our property management company that we use in Dallas, they are able to move to another market, right? If the deal's, big enough, they can certainly move. But, you have to really look at, how, if it makes sense, first of all, and if it doesn't make sense, then go with the pros that are in that market. And so that's what we did. Yeah.
Yeah, so that you kind of answered some of it, but I want you to dive a little bit deeper about how do you go about finding and evaluating and selecting a third-party property management, right? What's important to you? What kind of questions are you asking? How do you verify what they tell you? What do you guys do?
Yes, that's a very good question. So what we do is we look at, or we always have referrals, right? So we have, luckily for us, we have a lot of colleagues that are in the business. And so a lot of it is word of mouth, right? And we start off with that. Hey, have you used this property management company? How is the performance? How are your deals operating? How are they performing? You want to ask those kind of questions. Assuming that they are, they have a good reputation, and those kind of things. Then one of the things that you have to look at as well, in addition to that, is what type of assets that they're managing, right? And so one thing that we look at is, if there's A class, there's B class, and C class. You don't want to get an A class manager to manage your C class property. Vice versa, you don't want to get a C class manager to manage your B plus property. Even B to C is a distinct difference, because there's different tenant profile, right? And so these managers, they can operate maybe a B property, perfectly, and then they'll do the best for that property. But then they go to a C, and a C is going to be different. Why is it going to be different? Well, you have a different tenant base, you have a different demographics, you have different type of turns. The tenants demand different amenities for the property. It's a different type of clientele, so to speak, right?
Absolutely.
So B and C are totally different. If I'm looking at a B plus asset, I'm going to go after a B plus manager that has experience, that has, that's done it in that. And same thing with the C. Yep. So, just by the way, we don't look at age, but, it just used it as an example. So that's another example of what we do. And so, are they active in that market? And if so, then the other thing that we do is if it's the first time we're using them, then we get some referrals, or we ask for an opinion from the local brokers that are operating that market, and also the lenders. The lenders have a believe it or not, they have a good understanding of who is the right manager in a certain market. So just get referrals is what I'm saying, and then also understand the type of asset that you're buying, because it's not going to be the same, with property manager to property manager.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can take it even a step further. I've seen that the type of resident in your property, right, or the ones that you're going to target is also important, because if you're targeting a 55 and older, it's completely different than a community full of millennials, right? Just exactly. A whole different kind of interaction and expectations from the tenant base. And if you'll take a company that managed workforce, a little bit older properties, and you try to give them a property that is full of millennials that have demands, and at the same time willing to pay more for what they're getting, right? That's going to be not working very well. So
100%. 100%.
And for the listeners that haven't listened to our previous episodes, what Juan just said about making sure you find the property management that targets the class you're buying is a repeat thing that we've heard from multiple operators, and it's just solid gold here. So don't try to take a property management that manage A class and give them a B class with the expectation that they'll turn it into an A class. That doesn't work. Unfortunately, the other way does work, right? So you'll take a C class property management into a B class property, it'll turn to a C class real fast. So that's just an unfortunate situation, right?
That's the unfortunate side of it, yes.
Okay, great. So do you guys, what kind of profile of properties do you guys like? Do you like the value adds? Do you like them stabilized, management play? What is really your bread and butter?
Yeah, that's another very good question. So we like to look for properties that, first and foremost, they're stabilized, right? So stabilized. Now that being said, we're not opposed to looking at a deal that's underperforming or not stabilized. We definitely have taken a look at several deals like that. But if we and I'll tell you why in just a second. But we look for deals that are stabilized and deals that have some value add potential, right? So for the last couple of deals that we did, these are deals that were value add. From both a renovation standpoint and also an operational standpoint, right? So the deal that we have now, this was more of a hybrid. This is the deal that we have in Houston. This is more of a hybrid. So the reason why I say that is because the owner or the seller had done a lot of renovations to the property. And so a lot of the big ticket items were already done and taken care of. And so it's already a performing property. They did some renovations to the interior units. And so what does that mean for us? That means that we can go in there and continue that renovation program, because the best comp is the property itself, right? You can look at other comps, yes, but if the property is performing, well, and the other comps, they do support it, but if the property is performing and getting those rents, and then that's the best comp you can use, right? So this is more of a hybrid, and so it's already a stabilized property, performing well, and it has some value add potential as well. So we like to see that, first and foremost. Now, going back to my first point, and, I do look at some deals that are not stabilized, but we focus more on the stabilized deals. Why is that? It's because of the equity, right? Our equity, they like deals that are stabilized. So I think there's a place and a time for everything. It's just right now, our equity, our investors, they like to see deals that are stabilized because it presents a little bit less risk for them, right? And also for us, for everybody involved. Now, if I had some super aggressive investors and, they wanted some deals that were, 50, 60% occupied, where, we could turn this property around, putting 15, 20,000 a unit into them, then that's a different story, right? Then I will look for that all day, right? Because that's the strategy I have the guys to partner with and to work with it, for that type of deal. So that's why we look for stabilized assets, because, our equity, we always think about, what do they want, right? And yes. So that's why we take those kind of deals down.
That sounds good. So it doesn't sound like a really heavy value add. Are you handing that entire operation over to the property management, kind of build a plan? This is what I want to do. This is what I want you to do, and just hand it over to them for execution? Or do you have a separate way of executing the value add plan?
Right. So we're always involved in that, right? So obviously they're going to be the ones that are going to be in charge of the day-to-day, and making sure that we execute the business plan as we requested. And when we have turns, that they get done, in a timely manner. But ultimately, if we don't tell them and we don't stay on top of them, and we're not keeping track of the financials and seeing what's going on, then they're gonna just do it at their own pace, right? So we have to make sure that we follow a certain guideline, and we follow a certain the certain business plan that we have scheduled for the property. Like that it can be done, right? So yes, it's yes and no. I would say, to answer your question, yes, they do it directly, but we have to make sure that they're doing their job correctly, right? In other words.
Yeah, I'm just gonna reiterate something that you said here, right? It's kind of like, you can't just hand over the keys, right? It's really important that you stay on top of it, and you check and you ask the questions, and you hold them accountable. Because I've seen a few operators or wannabe operators just hand over the keys to the property management, and it just ends up in a disaster every single time. So
absolutely not. You're 100% accurate in saying that, and I think that goes back to the original conversation that we had. I think starting the podcast was being active, being passive. Yes, you can be, you're technically on the GP side, but are you active or are you passive? Are you passive in that you're handing over the keys and letting these guys just handle their own business, and okay, whatever goes, it happens. It's okay. I'll just report to my investors. Whatever you say is going to happen and goes. Or are you the guy that's knocking on the door, being active, doing those surprise visits, make sure that things are in order. There's a lot more to it than just sitting back and relaxing and just drinking pina colada, at the beach. You can't do that. So you definitely have to be involved.
Yeah, and I personally think it's going to be even more important in the next few years, because, you could have bought something in 2012, 2013 and just hand over the keys, and the market would probably correct almost every mistake somebody could do, right?
Yes,
The rents
yes.
were just going up so fast in the last 5 years that, if it's not operated professionally or not efficiently enough, the market kind of compensates for it. But as we get to very close to the top of the cycle, and I don't know how close we are, right? I don't have a crystal ball. It gets more and more critical to stay on top of it and make sure that no one takes their time and being slacking around to get those plans executed. So I think it's going to be more critical in the next 2 years.
Yeah, no, another one, man. You are right on. I think, I would echo what you said. In the 2010s, I think, even, I saw who was it, JC Castillo, that posted on LinkedIn just the other day. 2010s was a decade where we were able to buy deals, and if you were a semi good operator, or even you can even say a kind of bad one, you were saved by the market, right? So the cap rates kept compressing. There was a lot of capital coming into the market. Rents kept going up. It's just a combination of everything, right? So even if you did okay, even if you were that guy that was drinking that pina colada at the beach, most of the time you're going to be okay, right? Not every time, but most of the time. Why? Because those cap rates kept compressing. The market just kept going in your favor. And so even if you didn't do much to the property, just by the cap rate compression alone, you made out, right? So you go to sell the property and you made out. But in the 2020s, it's going to be a different story. And so, in 2020s, you may not get that same cap rate compression. I don't think we will either. I think, as a matter of fact, I think that the cap rates are going to start to go the other way. So what does that mean? If you're buying a deal today, does it mean that, if we do have a recession in the next year, or this year, in 2 years, whatever, what does that mean? Does it mean that, everything's going to go haywire and we're all going to be in bad shape? No, it doesn't mean that necessarily. It just means that you have to be able to properly operate your deals, make sure that you're staying on top of what's going on every single day, your financials, and do what you can, right? And I think more than anything is going to be tenant retention. Make sure that that our tenants that we have at the property are being well taken care of, and their needs are being met, right? So it just goes back to the basics, man. I think a lot of people kind of overcomplicate things, honestly, and I think it's just providing the basic fundamentals that people have, or that people need, and providing them in a good way, right? So obviously, there's amenities that you have to have and stay with the latest and greatest as far as technology goes. But just customer service alone, just the basic fundamental is very important. So I would think that you're right on with that statement as well.
Yeah. So you're working with the third-party property management. Give us a little bit of a picture of how does that look like? How often do you talk to them? Who do you talk to? Do you talk to the corporate office people? You talk to your regional? You talk to the on-site teams? How often do you show up on site? Give us a little bit more.
Yes. So our third-party property management company, so we have weekly calls, right? And so we hardly ever get on the calls with the corporate office, right? Unless there's something that's going on, or that's out of our control and we need to take care of, which is hardly the case. But usually these calls are with the on-site property manager in the regional. So we have these calls with both of them. And so, we look at over everything, what's going on, how many leases do we have, how was the traffic like, how many was the delinquency like, all those kind of questions that we have, if we have any CapEx repairs, or items that need to be taken care of, what's the schedule like, what's going on. And so we try to stay on top of every single one of those things, is those calls are on a weekly basis, but we look over and communicate, I wouldn't say daily 100%, but it's almost on a daily basis. And so we try to visit the property at the very least. If it's not local, at the very least, twice a month, once a month, twice a month, depending on where it's at. So twice a month for like our Dallas deal. I have a partner there in Dallas, and he's there. You don't have to be there every single day, but you got to make sure that you're there and have a presence there. For our Phoenix deal, that's a deal that obviously I'm in Houston, he's in Dallas. So what do we have to do? We have to make sure that we visit the property at least once a month. And so for that one, we also brought in a partner who is able to be there more frequently. And so we do it as a combination of all three of us. So yeah, you have to make sure you stay on top of it, and make sure that you're communicating well with them.
Okay, great. So as asset managers, right? But the ones that drive, the ones that operate, do you navigate or direct your property management to do any on-site events or parties, or how do you mentioned earlier, and I think you're absolutely right about customer service, right? It all comes down to clean, safe, warm environment, right? But also what we found that for retention, a sense of community is really important as well. So do you guys do anything for your residents that kind of our listeners can pick up and do as well?
Yes, definitely. So we always try to stay active with them, through like different parties, different events. And so like, we had a holiday party, Halloween, 4th of July, those kind of different events. And then, also whenever we do like surveys, we'll do surveys. So like, what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you would like to have, at the property? What is it that's missing? We like to do those kind of surveys as well. And for that, we just offer them, something, right? Offer them a gift card or something like that, so like that they're able to do those surveys. But it really was the information that we want, and to be able to know what it is that's going on at the property. As far as the management, is the management going well? Are they doing their job? Those kind of things. As far as, what do you guys expect at the property? What do you like as amenities? Those kind of things. So we always try to be involved because, if you're not, then they can go down the road, to the next guy. What makes you different than the next guy, right?
Yep.
So that's you have to be involved, and we are. We try to stay involved as much as possible.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So because you're coming in and doing value add, right? And right now you're focused on the light value add, the ones that are already stabilized. Other than renovating units and increasing rent, what other ways do you guys have to increase revenue? And we're going to talk about decreasing expenses in a second. So let's focus on the revenue side
on the revenue
for a minute.
Yes. Very good question. So, as we could be at the top of the market. Who knows how much further the rents have to go. I mean, obviously, when we look at deals, we always look to push the rents. Every single time we're looking at a deal, we always look for ways that if we can push the rents, then great, right? But as it's becoming more difficult to find deals that pencil out, right? Because everybody wants to be in the space. They're asking for crazy prices, and so you got to find that competitive advantage. So for us, and not saying that we bank on this, but for us, some of the ways that we've been able to generate that extra income is through additional income, right? Other income, right? So specifically on the other income, we look for sources like covered parking, reserve parking, Wi-Fi. Those are like the three main that we've used for the last couple of deals, and even our deal that we have now. So
what do you do with the Wi-Fi?
Yes, very good question. So for Wi-Fi, as I said earlier, we have to make sure that we stay on top of all the amenities and the technology, right? Because tenants, there's no tenant out there, there's nobody out there really without a cell phone, right? And so nobody out there really without technology, right? So one of the things that we provided with the Wi-Fi is obviously internet access for each unit. So the way it works is we have a contract with a third party service provider, and then they bill us directly. So we pay them for their services. So now what we're able to do is if let's say for example that on average they charge us $30-$40 per unit, then we could turn around and offer the Wi-Fi to the tenants, and so we can charge them $70-$80. So you make that delta, you make that difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way that we're doing it. And a lot of these tenants are going to get Wi-Fi for their apartment anyways. Yep. So we're able to offer that service right then and there. And we're implementing that in one of our properties. And we just launched that. And so I can't tell you 100% on the results, right now. But we had good long conversations, actually a lot of conversations, to make sure that this was something that was achievable. And we even asked our tenant profile if that was something that they would like, and it was overwhelmingly yes. So what that does also is that they are able to offer that service right at the very beginning. And then they can be activated as soon as they move in. They have Wi-Fi done instead of them having to do it on their own and going through that whole process. So yeah, ultimately what it does is that for the property level is that you're able to make that delta between what they're charging you and what you're charging or billing back the tenant. It's kind of like like rubs on utilities, kind of the same thing. So we're able to do that. So there's a couple different ways you can do that. One is you can buy your own equipment, so you can make sure that you account for that cost up front, and then pay for that. I mean, it's going to vary, deal by deal size. It has a lot to do with it as well. But that's one way that you're able to do it is pay for the equipment up front. The other way that you're able to do it is if they take care of the equipment, the third party provider takes care of the equipment. Now you're going to make less this way, but it's still a way where you are able to come out of pocket, nothing, right? So
yeah, it's like leasing the equipment basically.
It's like leasing the equipment. So there's downsides, right? Not everything's going to be an upside. There's downsides. One of them is that usually there's a 4 or 5 year contract that you have to sign. But and then if you don't have anybody that is paying for that service, you still have to pay for it, right? They're still going to bill you no matter what, right? So there's that. So you have to make sure that you have a ramp up type of agreement where it kind of you start off with a few units and then it goes up from there and it goes up into the full amount of units. So that's one way. But yeah, and then the other way, like I said, is covered parking and reserve parking. I think that's like reserve parking for example. I see so many properties that don't even have that. They're not even billing back for that, or they're not even charging tenants for that. And it's just something that you can just go over there and just get a little painting on the floor with the spot number, and then it's just so easy, right? Just bill them back, for a spot that's attractive, right? Same thing with covered parking. Yes, with covered parking, it's going to cost you on that one. It will, and it depends on which market you're in, but it's the same thing, right? If you're able to get the return on that, then why not? Then you should do it. So those are some of the ways that we try to make sure that we focus on that other income. And obviously the other one is the utilities, right? So rubs, yeah.
Okay, great. So let's look at the other side of the coin, right? Because every dollar we add in income is completely equal to every dollar we can save on operations, right? So give us 2-3 ways where you guys like to look at specific things and maybe reduce some of the expenses. Yes.
So one of them is a huge one on a lot of the deals that we look at is payroll, right? So a lot of times, it could be an owner that's owned the property forever, and he made some good friends at the property, and his staff, they're good friends or whatever, right? And which is fine, that's great. But if you're trying to have some good returns for your investors, then you got to find ways to reduce that payroll. And so sometimes it's because they're overpaying some of the staff. Sometimes it's because they have too many people at the property level. So you have to look at that number, and find ways to where you can reduce it. Which a lot of ways you can reduce it. Sometimes you have to increase it, right? Because they're understaffed. So, but in a lot of cases they are overstaffed, and or those expenses are too high. So that's one, payroll. Another one is going back to utilities. Utilities is a big one, but you look at like water expenses and electricity. How do you cut back on those? Well, have you done a green program? And I'm not specifically talking about going through a lender and doing their Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae type of green program, right? Because you can get those. You have their own program where they give you better pricing on the loan, right? Yes. And so that's one way, right? That's just for your loan. But specifically what I'm talking about is you doing your own green program. And so what I mean by that is, does the property have LED lighting exterior wise? If it doesn't, then that's something that you should immediately implement and add, right? Because it's going to go down to you, right? Because those are not, the tenants don't pay for those costs, you do, right? As a property owner. And what about if it's like a RUBS property, or even if it's not a RUBS property, usually water is something that's built back, right? is not necessarily individually metered, in most cases, right? So if you have, toilets, for example, that are old and, they're just, using up a lot of water, even shower heads, those kind of things, then, that's an easy fix. That's a really easy fix. So yeah, it can cost you, $50,000, $100,000 to replace all the toilets and shower heads and aerators and do all those things. But how much are you saving per month? Is ridiculous. The number that you can save per month. And then if you do it on a further basis and you want to see the value that you just added to the property, then you just divide it by the cap rate, right? And just so that you're able to even see the value that you just increase the property with. So I think it's huge. And I think, that's something that, people don't look at. And I think you should account for that. If you're active, you're looking for a deal, and look for ways that you can reduce that and make sure you account for 50 grand, 100 grand, 150 grand, whatever it takes to replace them. And you're going to see the big savings, on the back end and cash flow wise. So just go ahead and make sure you account for that. So those are the two biggest ways that I would say that, that we're able to reduce those expenses. Obviously, taxes. Living in Texas, taxes is a big thing. Especially in these. Unfortunately, yes. Especially in these primary markets where you're looking at, let's say, like in Bexar County, which is San Antonio, or like Tarrant County, they're pretty aggressive. Dallas County, Harris County. Yeah,
Collin County is one of the most aggressive ones in
Collin
Texas.
County. They're super aggressive, right? So, if you let them run over you, they're going to run over you, right? If you don't say anything and you just take it, then you're going to get it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you have to make sure that that you fight back. If you have to sue them, then you sue them. We'll do whatever you got to do to reduce that number. And you'll be able to have some strong tax savings there, or not. I wouldn't say tax savings. It's your money that you should get back. They're just taking it from you. So
yeah, for our out of state listeners that live in a disclosure state, Texas is a non-disclosure state, which means you don't have to tell the county and the state how much you paid for the property. So when they see that there was a transaction that transferred the deed, they're going to try to guess how much you paid. And a lot of the time, they might guess higher than what you actually paid, or they might guess right, but that could mean a big, big jump. So that's what Juan is talking about, trying to protest that new assessment. And sometimes it has to go to court. Sometimes we hire tax attorneys to go to court and litigate over that because the county just completely overreacted and exaggerated on the costs.
Yes. That's definitely very important to note. One thing I would say as well is speaking of the taxes, excuse me. So for example, like Texas, you said that we're non-disclosure. So a lot of these guys, it wouldn't doubt me. I wouldn't doubt it in my mind that these guys have access to a lot of the research information platforms out there, like a CoStar or ALN data or whatever, right? And the reason I say that is because a lot of these sources, they have those sales prices, where how it transacted and what the cost was and what the purchase price was. And so I wouldn't be surprised if these guys see that. And then let's say you buy a property at 20 million, and they're taxing you at 20 million, right? Evaluation. Then how can you say that the property is not valued at 20 million if that's what you paid for it? So that's just one thing that that's I just wanted to say. I think these guys do have access to all that. And I think for them it is small cost to pay. And it's a lot of money that they can be making for their county.
Yeah, so a couple of advice to our listeners about how to avoid that is, one, make sure that in your contract it says specifically in your purchase contract, it says that nobody's going to disclose the sale price, because right after you close, the CoStar and Yardi and ALN, they're going to make a phone call to everybody that was involved. They're going to call the title company. They're going to call the brokers. They're going to call the lenders. They're going to call you and your mother-in-law, right? They're going to call everybody they can to try to figure it out, because that's part of the service they provide for the people that use the data. If it's in your contract, then your broker cannot disclose it, and the other side broker cannot disclose it. and the lenders and so on and so on. So make sure that it's in the contract. That's one thing. The other thing is a more obvious one. If you get the phone call, tell them thank you, but I'm not telling you how much I paid for it, right?
Yes, very good.
And then lastly, and I don't know if every county does that. I know Collin County definitely does that. They will send you a letter from the county appraisal district that looks very official that says, please fill up the form. And that form asks all those questions.
I've seen it, yes.
And then in a very, very fine print, it says, well, you don't really have to tell us that, right?
Yes.
So it's like usually when I get those letters, it's got, okay, straight to the trash can, right? But a lot of people don't realize it's optional because it's coming from the county. It's got to be official, right? It's optional, so you don't have to fill it up in Texas. Make sure that you follow your state rules and regulations.
That's very, very good advice. Very good advice. You don't have to disclose it. Don't fill out those sheets. If you get a call, just ignore it or give them, answer and say, I'm not going to tell you, it's none of your business, so it really isn't, so they're just going to use that to your disadvantage.
Yes. Well, being in this business long enough, I'm sure you have a lot of stories. Give us a funny story, a horror story, a little bit of both. Give us a little something funny for the audience.
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily call it funny because it really wasn't. Oh yeah, you know what? I do have I guess it's kind of funny. It wasn't funny to me at the time though, but
it's never funny at the time.
It's never funny at the time, and it's never. Yeah, if it happens to you, it's not funny. But you look back on it, you're like, oh man. But so this was my very first deal, which was a 32 unit. And so I was a 32 unit that we owned and managed, and so we were doing renovations in the office, which was really a storage unit, right? It was a storage unit that we converted into an office. And so, because there was no real office at the property on site.
I have one of those.
We're using this. You had one of those? Yeah. So you just got to do what you got to do, right? So, and so we had this office and we had running water to the property or to that office. And so we went through like a big freeze, and, as you can guess, we got a call from the tenant, from one of the tenants. It's like, hey, I think you guys, I don't think it's supposed to be this wet because it really hasn't rained, but I see a lot of water. I just want you guys to know. And it was like 10:30 at night. And we're like, oh, great. And it's like freezing out, so then we go out there, and then, of course you can't see anything. It's dark and there's water everywhere. But, there's a shutoff valve. So here we are, digging through it, digging through all the mud, through all the water, through everything, freezing water, just to be able to find the shutoff valve. We ultimately found it, but after it had made like a big disaster. And so, yeah, it was because, it wasn't properly insulated, right? We should have done a better job of insulating the pipe. And so it's just one of those things. Hey, you think that's like the worst thing in the world, is it your worst day ever? But it's one of those things you look back on it and you kind of learn from it a little bit, right? And, it makes you, makes you a better person, I guess a better owner, right? Those kind of things. But it's not funny at the time. Yeah, make sure that you pay attention to the weather and you have your pipes that are well covered and that is not gonna happen.
Yeah, so that's a good operational tip comes out of this story, right? It's like watch the weather, and if the property if the weather is gonna drop below 0, right, or below 32. You're going to have to make sure that the day before your team runs around the property and all those faucets that come out of the buildings have the covers on top of them. If you have pipes that are coming out of a machinery room or a boiler room, that they are insulated, right? This is a very good operational tip for our listeners, right? It's kind of like, you don't think about these things, right? But then one of those incidents will teach you real fast to watch the weather. And if the weather is going to drop below the freezing point, you have a task list for that day.
You definitely have a task list, and really, you should be able to, whenever wintertime is coming, make sure that you prepare then. Don't wait till me, like where I did it after the fact. Don't do that. Make sure that you prepare, a couple months in advance. Not that whenever it does come, you're fine. Just make sure you monitor your property. But this is assuming that you have a smaller property, and or you're doing your own management. So which a lot of us, do still, right? So yeah, very good.
Awesome. Well, if you talk to a new operator, somebody that just signed a contract or just completed an acquisition, right? But it's the first property they're going to operate. What's the best advice you would give them?
Yeah, that's a very good question. What I would say is to make sure that they are on top of their property. Every single little thing, that they're on top. And so, if you're doing this for the first time, you're not going to know everything. That's just a given. You're not going to know everything. But make sure that you're asking your team, your property managers, all those questions, right? And there's never a dumb question in this industry, because we've these not only the property manager, but everybody that's been in this industry, have gone through different things, and so always ask questions. Don't have that ego going into a property, because could turn into a real bad situation real quick. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Is really what I'm trying to get at. Ask for help and be willing to take that advice from others that have been doing it much longer than you have.
Yeah, that's a really good advice. Like I said earlier in our conversation, this industry will teach you something new every day. It doesn't matter if you're doing it for 3 years, 30 years, or 300 years. There is still something new every single day.
All the time. And so, I haven't, there's a lot of things out there that I haven't gone through myself. And if I do experience that, then I'm gonna have to, reach out to the guy that's been there longer than I have, that can, help me out with that situation, or somebody. Always have somebody, with you, somebody that you can contact, somebody that you can ask for help from, because there's a lot of moving pieces to these deals. It's not just rent and expenses. That's just one piece of it. That's certainly one of the most important ones, but that's not all of it. So make sure that you have a good team and you're willing to ask for help.
Yeah, that's a really good advice. Our last question that we ask usually all of our guests is, if you could go back in time and meet young Juan, right? And let's say that you cannot tell them that 2009 is the bottom, buy everything. Okay, right? Let's put that aside. What would you tell young you? What advice would you give yourself?
So I knew that 2009 was going to happen, or I didn't know that was going to happen.
You can't tell them that. You can't tell yourself that.
Oh, I cannot tell myself that. Okay, so if it was back then, and I knew that I wanted to get into real estate at that time, then I think it goes back to having the right mentors. Because I think that's so huge, right? So having the right mentors to learn from, to reduce mistakes from. If I didn't know that the crash was going to happen, if I did know, then obviously I would buy anything and everything, because as we know, people that bought then, did very, very well. If I don't know that was going to happen, which, back in 2009, I didn't know it was going to happen. And so, just be prepared, and have the right, mentor, so to speak, that can help you with growth, right? So that's one of the
that's a great advice.
One of the best things is just having the right team. Like I said, having the right team, having the right people, because if you don't, then you can get burned really quickly. Right. And they'll help you navigate through some of these issues that arise, because they will arise, and you're able to get through them much easier, much quicker.
Wow, that's a really good advice. Having mentors, no matter at what level you are, having people around you, whether they are at your level or preferably a few steps down the mile from where you are right now, is always a good idea. I know I'm part of a few masterminds exactly for that reason. I look online, I connect in conferences with other owners, exactly for that reason, because this industry teaches you so many things all the time that when you bang your head against the wall, and even if your team that has decades of experience is banging their head against the wall, having other people that might have randomly crossed the same path as you do is super critical and can really save your behind on these things.
Yeah, and I guess it goes back to well, how do you know who to reach out to, right? How do you know who that right mentor? Because everybody says find a mentor, find a mentor. Yes, there's a couple different ways. I mean, one is simply paying for a mentorship program, right? You can do that, and that works out well. Or somebody that you can just simply add value to, right? Somebody that is an owner. You find out that who that owner is. You find them and you reach out to them and you just add value to them. Don't look for your own things. Don't know that. Just add value to them any way you can. And they naturally and organically become that mentor to you. And whenever you do need their help, for any one property that you're looking at, or whatever, they'll be there for you, right? So don't force anything. Make sure that it comes out more naturally, more organic. And those are really the best type of mentorships, in my opinion, because yes, the paid ones are great. You're gonna get some great people behind there. And the network around there is going to be great, and I've done those myself. But you find that one person who's done it and just become their really good friend. And yeah, I think those are the best ways to have a mentor.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to be conscious of your time. How can our listeners find you if they want to reach out, if they want to invest with you, if they want to ask you any questions? How can they find you?
Sure. That's Juan at genwealthcapital.com. It's Juan at genwealthcapital.com. Or they can, reach out to me, through social media. I'm on, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, even Twitter. So you can reach out to me any one of those platforms. TheJuanVargas.com TheJuanVargas.com. That's another one of my websites. But it's at The Juan Vargas for the social media platforms.
Yeah, and we'll put links to all of those in the show notes.
Sweet. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And thank you.
Well, Juan, thank you so much for being a guest today. It's been a pleasure.
No, I was going to say, it's been my pleasure. It's been my pleasure. I love the questions that you asked. A lot of solid questions, and I like your knowledge as well. And I hope that, your show continues to do really awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And to the listeners, if you want to listen more to our show, our website is the aptopr.com. And you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all the usual suspects for getting your podcast. We'll also appreciate it if you take a couple minutes and put a review for us. And until the next time, thank you.
Thank you for listening to our show. If you want to enjoy more episodes, please subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. For questions or feedback, please visit our site at www.aptopr.com.